This is CBN NewsWatch.
Happy Thanksgiving, and thanks for joining us for this special edition of CBN NewsWatch. I'm Mark Martin. A major symbol of Thanksgiving is the turkey, and each year the White House celebrates the holiday by the president issuing a pardon, allowing the turkey to go free. Take a look.
Now this is chocolate, right? Chocolate, you are pardoned.
I'm pleased to report that unlike millions of other turkeys at this time of the year, Drumstick has a very, very bright future ahead of him.
And those are just two examples in a long line of pardons allowing the bird a new lease on life.
It is a long-standing White House tradition in which the National Turkey Federation will present a turkey to the president, and the president will pardon the bird. So this has been going on in a lot of different forms for a long time.
The question is often asked, when did this tradition of pardoning turkeys for Thanksgiving begin? One theory is it started in 1863 during the Lincoln White House after the president's son Tad begged his father to spare a turkey he had adopted as a friend and playmate. Best-selling author and broadcast journalist Raymond Arroyo wrote a children's book about Tad and his turkey.
After his brother dies, Tad Lincoln befriends a turkey. Now, the turkey was sent to the White House as the centerpiece of the holiday table. Tad didn't know that. He trains the turkey to do tricks. He walks it on a leash. He teaches it to eat out of his hand. He befriends this turkey. And the big day comes when the chef comes and picks the turkey up and takes him to the kitchen. Tad freaks out. And I won't tell you the rest of the story, but it leads to this national holiday tradition.
Historian Lena Mann with the White House Historical Association, however, is not convinced it began with the Lincolns.
That is a really popular story. However, the sourcing for it gets a little tricky. It's just told in one source, and it's told 2 years after the fact. And also it was a Christmas bird rather than a Thanksgiving turkey. So a lot of questions about the veracity of that particular account.
The president of the National Turkey Federation, Joel Brandenberger, tells CBN News the official presentation dates back to 1947 during President Harry Truman's administration. He adds the presidential pardons actually began in the late 80s.
Beginning in 1989, President George H.W. Bush began the tradition of pardoning the turkey at Thanksgiving, and the pardoning has occurred every year since 1989 as part of the ceremony.
Regardless of when the birds first escaped the Thanksgiving table, the tradition lives on.
I think it's endured because it's fun. There's a lot of traditions at the White House that are much more serious in nature, which makes sense, honoring the presidency. But this particular tradition is a fun one. It also highlights the turkey and poultry industry in the United States right around the holidays. So that could be a boost for those industries. But really, it has become a really fun media spectacle.
I've been fortunate to be at events dating back to 1991. And each administration, each president puts their own unique stamp on it, does some fun, innovative things. There are not that many events that generate nothing but good feelings in our nation's capital, and this is fortunate to be one of them.
Arroyo adds there are greater life lessons to be learned in the pardoning of a turkey, pointing to that what happened between President Lincoln and his son came during the Civil War.
It's really a standing memorial to their affection, their love, and the mercy and forgiveness that Abe Lincoln taught his son and his son taught him at a moment of real crisis for the country.
Brandenberger and Mann agree on the greater meaning.
I think there's definitely some lessons in mercy and forgiveness, particularly around that idea of Thanksgiving.
We are so blessed in this country, and it's a time to give thanks for it. And having the president do this ceremony with the turkey, which is, the symbol of Thanksgiving, it's been a great way to sort of give a unifying message at this time of year.
A message of Thanksgiving and a time to have a little fun. Well, Thanksgiving draws attention to a sense of gratitude and the things we're thankful for. As medical reporter Lori Johnson shows us, making gratitude a part of our lives all year long can lead to major health benefits.
For thousands of years, Scripture has been very clear. Give thanks. And now health experts are saying the same thing.
Studies have shown that people with a more grateful disposition actually engage in more exercise, they eat healthier, They take care of themselves better by getting regular physical examinations.
The research is clear. Thankful people handle adversity better, experience less PTSD, clinical depression, and anxiety.
Gratitude has been shown to actually help cope with stress and negative life events.
As a bonus, taking this extra step can help your family and friends.
Gratitude actually has been shown to help improve the quality of one's relationship.
Most people aren't naturally grateful. That's why here at Revive Our Hearts Ministry, they actually teach people how to cultivate an attitude of gratitude. Nancy DeMoss Wolgemuth leads the ministry. She says thankfulness starts with telling God, you don't owe me anything good.
Oh Lord, if you never gave me anything else good in this life than having saved me eternally from sin, I am one blessed woman, and I will spend all of eternity giving you thanks.
In her book, Choosing Gratitude, Nancy recommends making Thanksgiving a priority for an entire month and keeping a journal to write down all blessings, big and small.
And I found that that discipline helped me to be conscious of, mindful of things that otherwise I might have forgotten, I might not have noticed. And I think that's why Psalm 103 says, forget not all his benefits.
She also suggests writing thank you letters.
It can be emails, it can be texts, and I do it that way too. But I try to write some old-fashioned, longhand thank you notes to say, I'm so grateful that you thought of me, for your kindness, for what you invested in me. And you know, you'll find that if you write that kind of note, you'll probably shock some people because it's so rare today.
Wolgemuth also encourages expressing Thanksgiving out loud several times a day.
We're much better at saying, you know, what we wish we had, what we have that we wish we didn't have, rather than saying thank you to God and to others for what we do have.
So for better health, make a conscious effort to give thanks, a lot of it every day. It's not easy, but well worth the effort. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Coming up, move over, Turkey. It's time to pass the geese and the lobsters. After all, that's what the Pilgrims served at the first Thanksgiving dinner. Stay tuned to hear more surprising facts about the Pilgrims and Plymouth Rock. Images of the first Thanksgiving include pilgrims wearing big buckles on their hats and belts and a big feast with a turkey at the center. But facts are more fascinating than fiction. Our Paul Strand takes us to Plymouth Plantation for the true Thanksgiving story.
The Pilgrims' first days and first feast in America are shrouded in conjecture and folklore, like the most famous object associated with their landing at Plymouth, Massachusetts.
Right inside that structure is the famous Plymouth Rock. Though many folks doubt there actually was a rock, and if there was, that it was exactly there.
But we do know the Pilgrims started building a small village like this faithful recreation of Plymouth Plantation, even as the harsh winter of 1620 was killing half their number.
And only had 51 of 102 people left at the end of that season.
Leo Martin and his wife Nancy not only run the faith-based Jenny Museum in Plymouth, but also serve as Pilgrim role players. Martin says the survivors of that winter went on to plant crops that grew well enough they knew they wouldn't starve. So it was time for Thanksgiving.
They developed enough food to make it through the next winter, and I thought that they ought to thank God for that.
For we desired a special manner of rejoicing, the Lord having sustained us for a year and brought in such a goodly harvest.
One of the only two pilgrims to write of that first Thanksgiving was Edward Winslow. His words about the preparations brought alive for CBN News by a Plymouth Plantation interpreter.
The very first feast that we had in these parts, our governor sent 4 men on fowling, and in just some small hours, them 4 men were able to take enough wildfowl to feed our company for a week.
In Plymouth's annual Thanksgiving parade, they envision the giant plump turkeys modern folks imagine the Pilgrims dined upon. Actually, their turkeys were wild, lean, and mean.
I find that the turkeys here of New England, they are a bit different than those that lived on the dunghills back home in England, but they are a toothsome bird.
Another sure fact, these grateful Englishmen didn't dine alone, because they knew they wouldn't have made it without the Indians, or Setchums as Winslow called them.
Not only did the Native Americans have to show them what could grow in this radically different soil, they had to teach these city dwellers from the old world how to hunt and how to fish in this new world.
They felt that Massasoit, the chief of the Wampanoag Indians, was so instrumental in their survival that they should invite Massasoit and his immediate family to that celebration, and they did.
But Massasoit misunderstood a bit.
While we were feasting and making of sports and exercising our arms, amongst us come the great Sachem Massasoit and about 90 of his men.
Martin points out that could have wiped out all the Pilgrims' supplies, but the chief and his braves brought plenty of food with them.
Venison, turkey, fish, vegetables, and together they had enough food for a 3-day celebration where they honored one another and became better friends.
Nora Messier, Plymouth Plantation's food expert.
Most likely there was fish on the first Thanksgiving table, as we now refer to it, possibly lobsters. We know that when the natives arrived, they brought with them venison, something not many of us put on our Thanksgiving tables today.
We'd put pumpkin pie on our tables. Messier showed CBN News what the Pilgrims would have done instead.
One of the things that, of course, most people would say, you can't have Thanksgiving without your pumpkin pie. What I'm going to be doing here is exactly what we know they did frequently in New England. The ancient standing dish is called stewed pompion. Pompion is the period term for the pumpkin.
The Pilgrims would dice it and stew it into sort of a mush.
Eventually, you're going to add just a splash of vinegar and a little bit of ginger. And supposedly, it's going to taste like stewed apples, something that was definitely not on the first Thanksgiving table. No apples in New England.
They were huge on stuffing, but it took a lot more labor.
Raisins, up until recently, had seeds in them still. Imagine picking out all of those seeds.
And they'd season it with herbs brought all the way from England, like thyme, hyssop, and parsley.
We believe that the things they're growing in their kitchen gardens in the 17th century are primarily things that had been brought over from England. They're trying to bring home with them. They're trying to make New England feel like Old England.
Which is maybe why a fellow like Winslow would have preferred something better than those skinny New England turkeys.
In truth, my greatest delight is a goose, for I do love its great fatness.
Paul Strand, CBN News, reporting from Plymouth, Massachusetts.
Still ahead, did you know that 10% of the U.S. population are descendants from the Mayflower? That's 30 million people from just 51 Pilgrims. What else did the Pilgrims contribute to this country? See for yourself right after this. Pilgrims are synonymous with Thanksgiving. You can't think of one without the other. Their covenant and form of self-rule shaped America's Constitution and entire government. And as Paul Strand reports, they believed religious freedom and liberty were worth dying for.
Christian historian Jerry Newcomb's documentary, The Pilgrims, looks at how those 51 Pilgrims not only survived their first Massachusetts winter, but went on to influence their future nation.
This small group casts a very large shadow.
From the documentary.
Did you know that today 10% of the population of the United States are Mayflower descendants? 30 million people from 51.
The Pilgrims founded America for all intents and purposes.
In those days, England demanded all citizens belong to the Church of England and conform to its beliefs or face harsh punishment.
You will worship as they say you worship. And so to do this illegally meant you could be arrested.
Or even put to death. So the Pilgrims fled.
They just wanted to worship Jesus in the purity of the gospel, and the king wouldn't let them do that. He was ruling it over their conscience. And that's why they fled.
They'd come to believe in radical ideas they found in the Bible, like they had rights given by God, and that he wanted them to be free, to govern themselves from within.
The Mayflower was a cargo ship, but the most precious cargo that was carried across the Atlantic were the ideas in the hearts of the Pilgrims that were drawn from the Bible.
And after unexpected winds blew them off course away from any governing authority, they made a covenant between God and man for a new form of government.
The Pilgrims gave us the Mayflower Compact, which was an agreement for self-government under God, which was really the first step in the creation, ultimately, of the Declaration of Independence and of the U.S. Constitution.
It was a polarity change in world government. Instead of top-down, ruled by these kings that keep getting more and more powerful, it's bottom-up. It's the people themselves deciding what laws they're going to pass and agreeing to submit to them.
It made freedom the cornerstone of America, as shown by the words on the Liberty Bell.
It says, proclaim liberty, throughout the land and to all the inhabitants thereof.
Some students are wrongly taught the Pilgrims stole from the Indians and treated them horribly. The record shows the opposite was true.
The Pilgrims were kind to the Indians. They showed them love. They showed them compassion. They showed them the godly way to live.
They did take some buried corn in cold New England, but only because they were literally starving.
And they even said, when they later came into contact with the Native Americans, they said, find out whose corn that is so we may repay them.
They didn't steal land in Plymouth. It had been abandoned by the Indians.
There was a plague that occurred 3 years before the voyage of the Mayflower, and it wiped out about 95% of the Indians in that particular region.
They wouldn't come back on it because of the plague. The Pilgrims took land nobody wanted.
And they showed the Indians they'd treat them as equals.
There was even a situation where a Pilgrim killed an Indian. The Pilgrim was put on trial.
The Indians expected
a mock trial, go through the motions, get it over with, let them go. After all they did was kill an Indian.
And that's not what happened. They found the Pilgrim guilty, and he was hanged for murder.
Everybody was equal under the law. Now the Indians could trust the Pilgrims.
The Pilgrims showed future Americans a God-blessed cause was something worth suffering for, even dying for. The Mayflower's Captain Jones offered to rescue them from the first deadly winter they faced.
Half their men would have died. This is not what they signed up for at all. And Jones says, anybody who wants to come back to England with me, I will take them. Not one of them went.
The Pilgrims made living by the Bible and loving it a very American habit.
And their textbook was the Bible.
The Bible was the key book for the first 200 years.
The Founding Fathers brought America an enlightened revolution.
And above all, they quoted the Bible 4 times more than they quoted any human author.
It gave them the go-ahead to throw off Britain's ungodly tyranny.
They recognize that there is a higher law, the law of God, and that God presides over the affairs of nations.
You are to obey the lawful authorities, but if the lawful authorities take too much authority unto themselves and they violate God's laws, then obedience to God means resistance to tyrants.
So the Pilgrims who'd fled England for their freedom laid the foundations that shaped America and eventually its freedom. Paul Strand, CBN News, Washington.
A lot of great information this show. Well, coming up, it's a mission to get thousands of turkeys for Thanksgiving, but it's a race against time. We're going to give you a preview of a new film based on a true story. Welcome back to this Thanksgiving edition of CBN NewsWatch. The Great Turkey Town Miracle is a new Christian-based film based on a true story. It's about a DJ on a mission to gather thousands of turkeys for Thanksgiving in order to save his job and keep his family closely knitted. Charlene Aaron sat down with the director of the film for a preview and why he thinks this movie is universal for all audiences.
It's 8:55 in the morning here at KXT. Stick around for the network news at 9. Wow, I can't believe we are getting close to Thanksgiving.
Actor Angus Benfield plays the lead role of washed-up DJ Connor McLeod.
Morning mouth, Connor McLeod. 7 stations in 15 years.
Dad, I'm scared. We're gonna have to move again.
No. I'll sort something out.
On CBN's Prayer Link, Benfield explained that the true story is based on the life of the film's writer, including his quest to find thousands of turkeys for Thanksgiving.
He was a DJ at a local radio station, and he lost his job. And when he found a new job, he was working for a homeless shelter. Well, his first job was to try and find 4,000 turkeys for Thanksgiving, which seemed like a daunting task, obviously. But in the end, it obviously got a lot worse. And this is a completely true story. And so he obviously had a deadline to get it before Thanksgiving. There was 4,000 families waiting for these turkeys. And he tried everything he could to find them. And he found several, maybe a few hundred of them. It is kind of the, loaves and fishes kind of story, and a true miracle happened.
Benfield, who also produced and directed the movie, once served as a pastor. He said the Lord led him from church to cinema.
One day the Lord really spoke to me and just said, talked about Matthew 25, about the gifts and the talents. And
wow,
you're saying, well, this is good. What you're preaching is good, but you do have these other gifts and you should start to use those other gifts. So I kind of merged the two things of filmmaking and preaching.
Benfield also says the message of the movie is universal.
It's a Christian film, but, who would you encourage to go watch it? Not just Christians, right? And what do you hope they take away from it?
Really, it's a film about hope, and I think anybody can relate to these characters and what they've gone through, and everybody's lost a job at one stage, particularly now when there's Thanksgiving or Christmas coming up, when the bills are piling up and you haven't got enough money to provide for your family. So it really connects to that, the struggle that people go through. So I think anybody, whether you're Christian or non-Christian, can relate to that in this film. And I think it will really give anyone who watches it a real sense of hope and inspiration to keep going, really, and not give up. And even though you have only little and you may not have everything that you want, if you just use what you've got, the Lord will always bless that.
Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
Great message there. Well, here's another story of thankfulness as Good Samaritans come to the rescue of someone in need. A group of 3 men in Norristown, Pennsylvania saved a mother and son recently from their burning car. The men spotted the flames and jumped in to help. The driver still unaware that she and her 3-year-old son were in danger. Just minutes after the Good Samaritans pulled the two out of the car, it erupted in flames. The mother thanked the men for saving her and her son's life. The men going even a step further, raising money to help her buy a new car. Wow, Good Samaritans indeed. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. Remember, you can find more of our news programs on the CBN News Channel anytime or online with cbnnews.com. Also, tell us what you think about the stories you've seen by emailing newswatch@cbn.com or talk to us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Hope you'll join us next time. Have a great day and happy Thanksgiving.